Every year, a large number of warriors tried to join, striving to carry the weight of this prestigious name on their shoulders. There was only a 1 in 500 chance of getting in, and of those who succeeded, only 150 graduated fully. The competition was about to begin. Two boys were seen engaged in an intense physical fight. Many people were brawling in closed rooms. A gray-haired man watched everything from a superior position in the distance. He was the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. He was impressed because this year there were many candidates. Suddenly, the director, Yoo Min-jun, descended upon the scene, a descendant of the Yushin family. Lee Sang-cheol commented that it was common to see top-ranking admissions and asked if he had come to observe his niece's performance. Yoo Min-jun affirmed, stating that the Yushin family held great expectations for So-yeon. The name of the girl made him pause and thought. She was part of one of the 5 most prestigious families in Korea. Typically, people learn to handle mana at the age of 10 during elementary school, and by 13, they could already channel it into their swords. By 16, if an example duel were held against someone from the Yushin family, they would always win. The senior instructor then asked his friend what made that girl so special. He replied that the Yushin family communicated with a constellation guardian, as unbelievable as it seemed. But that was exactly what he had been looking for. In Korea, there were 5 generations, each family tied to a constellation guardian with unique powers, usually granting blessings and protection to hunters. The Yushin clan had the god of the sword, the Jangsan group had the divine spirit, the Jin Choi family held the martial arts deity, along with the god of fists from the Osin organization. And lastly, the John family had the divine archer. The 5 members of these families carry the protection of the constellations, wielding more power and talent than others. However, good communication was different from a simple blessing, as speaking with the Star Guardian was almost like forming a direct contract. The senior instructor remarked that they had a true genius there, prompting a question from Yoo Min-jun. He asked if his niece's match had started, to which he was told it hadn't, but he had arrived just in time as it was set to begin in 30 seconds. They discussed how, down below where visibility was better, there were many reporters and guild recruiters. Yoo Min-jun jokingly asked Lee Sang-cheol to put it on the big screen since he was the senior instructor. He too was curious to watch. Soon So-yeon appeared on a huge screen. She was the eldest daughter of the Yushin family, and she was battling Kim Joo-hyuk, a 17-year-old boy, who seemed very relaxed and likely to give up once he realized who the girl truly was. The boy looked like a complete fool. The senior instructor and his friend felt nothing extraordinary coming from him. The countdown soon began. The boy remained relaxed even with only 2 seconds left before the match started. But just 1 second remaining, the girl already had fire in her eyes. Finally, the signal to begin the battle was given. So-yeon charged at Kim Joo-hyuk boldly. Wielding her massive, sharp sword, she utilized all the skills she had previously mastered. Lee Sang-cheol thought the girl was very young but still knew how to wield the sword firmly and had excellent mana control. Kim Joo-hyuk observed the sword coming toward him. He gave a slight smile and dodged the strike, leaving the onlookers astonished and terrified. Because he had won, leaving So-yeon on the ground defeated. He wondered why the girl was so weak, even doubting events 300 years into the future. 3 centuries ago, something had happened at the Tower of Destruction. 2 men were fighting valiantly. The owner, the King of Destruction, Brace for Martha, it had been a great battle, leaving the martial leader Kim Hyen-oh greatly weakened. Brace wore strange blue glasses and had enormous white hair. Kim Hyen-oh agreed that the fight had been excellent. The MC let out a slight chuckle. Kim Hyen-oh became very alert when a panel appeared in front of him. They announced that the Tower of Destruction and its ruler, Brace, had been defeated, halting the world's annihilation. The enormous structure began to crack loudly. Kim Hyen-oh realized the building was collapsing after he had defeated his enemy. He groaned in pain, lamenting that this was supposed to be his moment to live in complete peace. Since childhood, he had endured heavy labor as a hunter to survive, and all the money, fame, and life he had dreamed of were crumbling before him. He knew he should have brought his disciples along, but he reconsidered this thought, because that guy had been the strongest opponent he had ever faced, and everyone could have ended up dying right there. He bids farewell to the world with his hand on his wound, and soon begins to degrade right there. Suddenly, the boy opens his eyes. Kim Hyen-oh had reincarnated into the body of a young man named Kim Joo-hyuk 300 years after the tower's collapse. In the current time of his reincarnation was satisfactory. Even though his physical condition was weak, all his knowledge had remained. He thought that simply adapting to the new body, he could live in peace until the translucent window appeared again, informing him that in 5 years the Tower of Destruction would reappear, giving him that time to prepare. He was angry because that guy had already been defeated. He felt he should have burned Brace's body but couldn't just stand there regretting it for no reason. In that era, the conditions to conquer the tower should be easier, and this time he was determined to live and enjoy life. Something appeared on the panel, leaving him confused again. It mentioned finding lost weapons and memories in the Valhalla constellation room on the 3rd underground floor. He realized everything he needed to do at that moment. It would be the 4th day in Valhalla, where the top 10 rankings would be decided. Those who were summoned had to head to the stadium. Kim Joo-hyuk got excited to go there. All participants had to take their positions. The spectators were quite excited, watching everything. This was the same moment when the senior instructor thought there were too many people compared to last time. He observed everything from above. The newcomer Kim Joo-hyuk was ready to battle. The match would begin in 30 seconds and his opponent was already in front of him. The eldest son of the Osun family, Oh Se-hyuk, aged 17, was there. He wasn't very good at literature, strategy, or martial arts. However, he had a talent above the others. There was his impressive and strong physique. He could do what others couldn't without mana, and even with little training, he grew significantly stronger. He was born with a top-tier physique that required no effort and was considered a genius for that reason. He stared fearlessly at his opponent with an extremely angry expression. The two were standing in front of each other. Kim Joo-hyuk showed the middle finger and insulted his opponent. This left Oh Se-hyuk furious and enraged. He charged at him, calling him trash. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that with the body he was reincarnated into, he wouldn't win in close combat and didn't know much about his opponent, with strength being the main issue so far. Even though the enemy had superior physical strength, it didn't mean he would win. Oh Se-hyuk tried to deliver a powerful punch to the reincarnated one. He dodged because he had martial arts to enhance his physique, and something very important as well. He landed a massive slap, knocking his opponent down. Oh Se-hyuk was left confused and unsure of what had just happened. Kim Joo-hyuk gave a slight wink with his right eye, and revealed his ability to observe his opponent, landing a precise blow to his opponent's body. He rolled his eyes, blood coming from his mouth, falling unconscious and severely weakened. Kim Joo-hyuk won the battle, saying that if those two abilities were in harmony, this outcome would have been impossible. Even though this body was weaker than before and shouldn't have any problems hunting monsters and being a hunter as he once was. He headed to the exit after annihilating his enemy, leaving everyone who watched the battle perplexed. They commented on how Oh Se-hyuk was knocked out and brought down by such a simple attack. A man in the back thought deeply about all of this in silence. He was the head of the Osun family, the king of fists, Oh Chulshin, very angry at the opinion of those ignorant enough to call the attack simple. Even though his son had only trained his physique, ignoring martial arts, he should have easily dodged that blow. But this time, there was something he couldn't evade. Se-hyuk let his temper get the better of him and just charged at Kim Joo-hyuk. He had even used magic, which he rarely used, to try and end it quickly. But Kim Joo-hyuk tilted his head slightly to dodge. Since he was certain the strike was accurate, he shifted his entire center of gravity forward, making Oh Se-hyuk fly in despair, surprised by the missed punch. His opponent's hand was extended and open at that moment to counterattack. This meant that Kim Joo-hyuk moved faster than Se-hyuk at maximum speed, proving he already had a plan for the battle, and not alone was already a monstrous talent. Oh Chulshin, after processing all of this, remained silent and deep in thought. Unfortunately, many people also recognized the value of that rookie, and not all of them were ignorant. Oh Chulshin thought of the name Kim Joo-hyuk and resolved to ensure the boy would join the family no matter the cost. The stadium lights were turning on. Many fans of Choi Aranuna were there, cheering enthusiastically. The boy was quite impressed by those Limitics, who had already served in the military yet were clamoring for a 17-year-old girl, calling her Nuna. That would be the final ranked match. Kim Joo-hyuk was set to fight Choi Aran, the second daughter of the Trojan family. At the start of the match, she immediately drew her sword from its sheath, preparing to strike for the first time. Kim Joo-hyuk faced her with a calm, serene expression. The two stood still for a moment, neither moving nor speaking. He quickly assumed she was waiting for his first move, and the fact that she was at least trying to read the situation made her better than his previous opponents. He chuckled lightly, pondering what he should do at that moment. Then he started walking toward his key opponent, who was on guard. He observed her with a frightening expression, his hands in his pockets. She stared back, fearless and unafraid. She gripped her sword with great strength and determination, releasing flashes of lightning. Everyone was impressed because the girl had already mastered the Trojan family's elemental exchange ability at just 17 years old. She charged at her opponent with all her courage and determination. The boy took a slight step forward, giving her the opportunity to strike. She immediately delivered a blow with her sword, unleashing a torrent of blue lightning with immense power. But she was left baffled because her enemy had disappeared from in front of her so quickly. Suddenly, he remarked that if she revealed her attack's target with her eyes, it would be easy to dodge. He was standing calmly beside her. She was utterly confused by this, and out of nowhere, she was struck directly on her body. Her eyes widened, showing a mix of pain and agony, like she felt relieved to have defended the blow. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at her without saying a word. Choi Aran quickly grabbed her impressive sword, flying backward with it in her hands. Kim Joo-hyuk was impressed because the girl had managed to block his blow with her sword, which was why he hadn't felt the impact on a human body, but rather on an object. She thought it was incredibly heavy. Suddenly, a fist touched her sword. Choi Aran stared at her opponent before her, who challenged her to dodge the next attack. Then he unleashed a powerful strike, sending the girl flying far away with a desperate expression. She landed on the ground, sprawled, and left there. The boy thought there was something odd about that attack. It seemed like his posture was slightly off, but in the end it didn't matter because the victory was secured regardless. The The panel displayed the top 10 admissions to Valhalla, and Kim Joo-hyuk ranked first. He was walking nearby, adjusting his shoulder. Suddenly, many voices left him surprised and confused. A crowd had gathered, begging for his attention and acceptance into a group. Annoyed, he shouted everyone to shut up, wrapping up this chapter. On the news page, the headline was that Kim Joo-hyuk was on the verge of madness, described as a crazy psychopath. 92 comments criticized him, claiming he was likely a bad person due to his reprehensible actions. For a rookie, the boy was seen as very arrogant and over the top. The comments continued discussing his potential and negative behavior. Meanwhile, in the grand, towering buildings of Valhalla, the freshmen were being warmly welcomed. Kim Joo-hyuk thought all the introductory information about Valhalla's history was boring and tedious. Then he noticed a boy behind him. The boy averted his gaze with a nervous and shy expression. Kim Joo-hyuk figured he had attracted a lot of attention the previous day, but there was still an unresolved issue, that claim about weapons and memories that the panel had ordered some time ago. On his way, Kim Joo-hyuk thought he only needed to get in and out, which seemed like an easy task. Yet he noticed something nearby. The opening ceremony had already ended by then. The virtual combat simulation room was just ahead. The former chief instructor of Valhalla from the Trojan Guild, Kim Lee-gun, wondered why the class distribution was arranged that way. Ahead was Yu So-yeon from the Yushin family, and beside her stood Aren from the Chojin clan. In the middle was Oh Si-hyuk from the Osun group. They had said the classes would be distributed randomly, but 3 of the 5 geniuses from the families were in the same room. And there was something else interesting. The guy glanced at Kim Joo-hyuk and noticed that he was also in that class, completely condemning the man's year. He tried to calm himself to assert control over the situation right away. He introduced himself, saying it was a pleasure to meet the young ones and that he was the person in charge of the class as well as their instructor. First, he pressed a button on the podium he was standing at. All the girls panicked at what happened next. Suddenly, they all appeared in a vast field. Everyone began questioning where they were, as they had been in a completely different place just seconds ago. Kim Lee-gun grasped the hilt of his sword and thought about showing a bit of bloodlust right there. Suddenly, several demonic beings, hideous and terrifying, appeared, filled with rage and wielding various weapons. Everyone began screaming and panicking at the sight of it all. Oh Si-hyuk thought those were orcs and goblins, and there were at least 100 of them. Suddenly, the ugly green monster started moving toward him. One tried to strike him with its sharp clawed hand, and another tried to leap toward the boy, but it was stopped by the protective barrier. Kim Lee-gun thought everything was going according to plan, because the barrier was working perfectly. He then called Kim Joo-hyuk closer. The latter approached the podium and was promptly asked by the instructor if he could handle all those monsters entirely on his own without any help. These were the monsters surrounding the barrier. The boy thought silently about his answer. Kim Lee-gun reasoned that he was now certain of the boy's diminished ego, which was natural since most had only ever seen monsters in books and comics. He told Kim Joo-hyuk to stop pretending to consider it and just say no so the lesson could proceed. The boy gave a slight smirk. This made the instructor angry because the boy was laughing, and soon he discovered that Kim Joo-hyuk could, in fact, handle the monsters alone. He thought the boy was bluffing and told him to try since he was so confident and certain about it. Kim Joo-hyuk questioned him, saying that such a thing couldn't be done on the first day without some kind of reward for the mission. After saying that the boy was really speaking his language, and was quickly asked what he wanted to bet on at that moment. He replied that if he handled all the monsters, the instructor would fulfill all his wishes as long as they were within his power. The boy placed his hand on his chin, thinking, and said that although it wasn't a big deal, he would accept the deal. The instructor tried to intimidate the boy, who simply asked for the sword quickly, because it would be impossible to fight barehanded without any weapon to assist. He immediately placed his hand on his sword and handed it over for the boy to use. Kim Joo-hyuk observed the weapon with a delighted and excited expression. He placed it on his back, looking at the enormous challenge ahead. The instructor watched everything with a downcast expression. All the young people were also watching, thoroughly entertained. Kim Joo-hyuk firmly gripped the weapon and began to fight bravely and fiercely against the monstrous beings, concluding this chapter in a furious and angry expression, continuing to bravely eliminate all his opponents. One of them tried to strike him cowardly from behind, but the boy quickly gripped his weapon firmly and blocked the potential strike without a moment's hesitation. He thought he wasn't doing too badly, considering it had been 300 years since his last action with the blade. Back then, due to the monsters, humans couldn't fulfill their roles and all types of weapons were used to kill them. But even so, the sword remained a very familiar tool. He attentively observed 2 things, as he had noticed something strange. There was a monster trying to attack him mercilessly and cowardly from behind. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly dodged the cowardly strike, and everything was just as he had imagined, following a very simple pattern. There was just a very well-made NPC monster simulation. Everyone inside the capsule watched him, thoroughly impressed. Kim Lee-gun thought it was impossible, as he had only lent the boy a mere, almost useless sword. It had no magical power or fast fencing capabilities, yet the boy was cutting through everything with incredible ease and mastery. It was as if the sword was absorbing all those monstrous beings. The girl was stunned, and the boy reflected on all that madness. She observed him through the protected capsule, standing completely still. She remained silent, not uttering a single word, with an expression of amazement and perplexity. Kim Joo-hyuk stated that he wanted to go to the constellation room. Since he had defeated all those weak enemies, he left the area and headed toward the protected barrier. He then asked if the instructor would fulfill his promise, making him visibly angry and irritated. The sun was already setting amidst those towering buildings. Kim Lee-gun wrapped up his class and advised the tired students to rest in their dormitories without lingering in the area. The boy was slumped in a chair in the classroom, thinking the class was too long and wanting to grab his belongings to leave as quickly as possible. He also thought about how he never wanted to teach students and hadn't even gone to school himself before. And while the class had been boring most of the time, he had managed to gather a lot of important information, especially regarding topics related to the history of constellations. In his previous life, there was no such thing as speaking of it. Constellation was the term used to describe the transformation of those who amass great fortunes into deities, often connected with hunters. Valhalla in Korea was the third largest academy in the world, containing various constellation relics. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that everything about slaying monsters and swordsmanship seemed useless, and that he should head to the dormitory to focus on practicing martial arts, as his body was quite weak. But suddenly, he noticed something unusual. It was the white-haired girl approaching from behind. Meanwhile, in the professor's office, a man sipping coffee commented that his friend had been through a lot. Kim Lee-gun admitted that, to be honest, it was more embarrassing than truly painful, and questioned whether that boy was really a high school student to Lee Sang-cheol, who was astonished to learn that the boy had killed 120 monsters in the simulation room without having ever seen one in real life. What Kim Lee-gun was saying was absolutely true. From what the senior instructor observed, Kim Joo-hyuk seemed ordinary, but carried something in his past. Kim Lee-gun was impressed to discover that the boy was an orphan from a small orphanage in a highly dangerous area, and by no means was he lying, as Lee Sang-cheol had conducted his own research on the matter. Furthermore, a fraud wouldn't attempt to enter Valhalla by causing a scene at the opening ceremony. Lee Sang-cheol asked if the boy had requested to enter the constellation room, receiving an affirmative response from Kim Lee-gun. The senior instructor said he would let the boy go to the first floor of the basement according to the director's instructions, making his friend very grateful for it. And since he had brought him there, he should take responsibility. Besides, he didn't know much about the completely restricted area on the 5th floor, but there should be no problem with a quick visit to the first. Kim Lee-gun expressed concern about what might happen in the next year, leaving his friend confused. His class had 3 students from the 5 families, and it wasn't easy to manage even one of them, which the senior instructor fully understood. He didn't try to comfort him, but mentioned there was an exchange student from the Ventric family in another class, leaving him quite surprised. Rochdale Ventric belonged to the Direct Ventric group. Kim Lee-gun heard that the boy had been expelled from the British Academy for causing trouble. He took a deep breath, still somewhat worried, and said that after hearing that, he felt his situation was better than the niggering class. Kim Joo-hyuk looked at the girl with a dubious expression. She also stared back at him without saying a word. He broke the silence, asking what had happened. The girl asked him to teach her all those swordsmanship techniques, concluding this chapter. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't quite understand all of it. The girl was very eager to learn the swordsmanship he had demonstrated earlier, but he responded negatively, and she questioned his decision. He replied that it was simply because he didn't want to teach, and since the girl had nothing more to say, he would leave. She looked into his eyes and asked, "Please." He answered again that he simply didn't want to teach her. Insulting her, he called her deaf and told her to stop following him immediately, because Kim Joo-hyuk had no intention of teaching her. He walked away from the spot immediately, leaving the girl there alone, looking sad and disappointed. The next day, in the grand buildings of Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk was sitting in his classroom chair, very quiet and deep in thought at that moment. He looks at his hands and realizes his body was better than he thought, yet he couldn't do much since he had no magical power, and it was hard to control his mana. This problem could be resolved if he found that thing, and for that, he would prepare a low magic. Suddenly, someone approached him speaking. It was a blonde show-off bully. He was Rochdale Ventric, accompanied by his assistant, Uria de Felix. He walked over to Kim Joo-hyuk's desk. Kim immediately asked for his identity. Rochdale Ventric thought the boy was uneducated since he didn't know his family. He quickly introduced himself and said he didn't want to waste time. He asked if Kim Joo-hyuk was interested in becoming strong. He invited him to join the main Ventric family. In most families, the affiliated lineages have more difficulty gaining power and wealth compared to the main branch. However, the Ventric family had a beak mask, a constellation guardian, making it different from others. Typically, an S-class soldier or higher would protect the organization, directly selecting a star member and granting them power and protection. But for the Ventric family, they chose to sign an agreement with a non-constellation related individual to avoid contractual misunderstandings. Due to this unique decision, the organization held significant power in Europe, and joining it would grant immense influence. With this authority, Rockdale Ventrick, supported by his family, had become excessively arrogant. Something had happened not too long ago. Due to an incident at the British Academy, he had been expelled, but he wouldn't cry over spilled milk. At the door of that place, alongside his assistant, he declared he always got what he wanted. And even though he had been expelled before, being from the Ventrick family meant they would always find a way to put him back on track. After all, that person would enjoy it too much. Returning to the present, he tried to talk to Kim Joo-hyuk. He thought he could have the boy, who had been the center of attention at the entrance ceremony, on his side. So he offered the boy a proposal to take him to the Ventrick family's constellation if he accepted. But he was arrogantly declined. He stood there stunned and not knowing what to do at that moment. Its assistant also made a strange face. He became furious, but Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't naive and realized he wasn't truly interested and had just wanted to show off from the start. Rockdale Ventrick angrily called the boy a rude, disgusting brat. Suddenly, an authority figure arrived, ordering everyone back to their seats and calling out the show-off. This made him even angrier because the man addressed him by his full name. The man was the senior instructor, Lee Sang-chil. He emphasized Valhalla's rules, reminding everyone that this wasn't the academy. The show-off thought about that man, knowing he was a combat instructor. He gritted his teeth in rage and fury, returning to his seat quietly with his servant. He declared he would encounter Kim Joo-hyuk again someday. Kim watched everything with his red eyes without saying a single word. Later that day, as school ended, Kim Joo-hyuk thought about how he hadn't learned anything related to the Constellation Hall during the lessons and had instead gotten involved with an idiot that morning. He pondered many things about the Guild scouts, students, and instructors who wanted to recruit him despite his criticism of them. Once again, someone approached him from behind. It was the persistent girl, asking him to teach her fencing again. He became annoyed, realizing it still wasn't enough for her either. Back in the Grand Valhalla dormitory, more specifically in the highest class hall, inside someone was seething with anger, smashing chandeliers with uncontrollable fury. It was the annoying and arrogant Rockdale Ventrick. He was infuriated by the orphan Kim Joo-hyuk, who had humiliated him. He demanded that Yuria immediately call Dizera, as he needed someone to deal with a certain person, ending the chapter. Rockdale Ventrick continued to simmer with rage. He once again called his poor assistant by name. She stayed quiet and still as he spoke. He grabbed her hair forcefully and cruelly, demanding she respond immediately. He then asked if she still believed herself to be the eldest daughter of the palace family. He threatened to throw the poor girl out of the group, prompting her to beg him not to. He swiftly threw her to the ground with all his strength. Once more, he ordered her to call Dizera, as there was someone for him to deal with. He also instructed her to inform a second-year member of the Rise family that he wanted to see him. The terrified, helpless blonde assistant replied affirmatively. At their Valhalla dormitory, specifically in Kim Joo-hyuk's room, he was meditating with bright blue magic radiating from his body. He was deeply focused on what he was doing. Suddenly, he coughed, releasing a lot of smoke. Realizing once again that his body was truly useless and couldn't summon any magic with it, he entered a deep silence, lost in thought. He began recalling his return to the dormitory that afternoon, when the girl had appeared behind him once again, and approached him for the second time. They had already reached the dormitory door and she kept following him. She repeated her request like a parrot, being so irritating it almost begged for action to be taken. He then proposed 10 million won per lesson. The girl looked deeply saddened and disappointed again, and since she probably couldn't afford it, he had decided to leave. Suddenly, she asked for his phone, leaving him utterly confused and unsure of what was going on. He asked why she was doing that. She was adding her number, so it would be easier to transfer the payment, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk even more astonished. Out of nowhere, he received a notification on his phone. There was a transfer of 100 million won, and now he was supposed to teach her his impressive and masterful techniques. He said he wouldn't do it and would decline the transaction. Returning to the present, he reflected on how shocked he had been earlier. How could a high school student have 100 million won? If he were to teach her, he wouldn't have to reveal all his secrets, but the sheer amount of money was overwhelming. He figured he could use it for what he needed, so it didn't matter, even if his mana was as limited as a beggar's. He stood up, ready for his mission. Taking his first steps toward victory, he was going to find the secret vault at that moment. Even amidst complete darkness, he walked through dense vegetation. He thought about how he had checked beforehand, but most vaults hidden 300 years ago had been destroyed. According to his research, only 4 might remain, and it was likely that just 3 were left. One thing was certain: they would be in the Valhalla Mountains, and he would search without giving up. He began to channel all of his blue magic. The vault's location could be determined by sensing the marble, which responded to his abilities and could be detected even with minimal effort. A bright circle appeared on the ground. Finally, Kim Joo-hyuk had found something. He approached the glowing neon blue circle and started digging with his iron shovel, once again realizing how weak his body was. He thought that if he had known about this hardship, he would have buried it in a shallower, more accessible place. And if it weren't for the Tower of Destruction 300 years ago, there would have been no need for any of this. The world had been on the brink of destruction, and there was no safe place for his riches, so he had built great vaults and stored everything there. With great faith, he believed the contents inside would be safe and intact. The sun was already rising over the towering buildings of Valhalla, and at last, Kim Joo-hyuk found what he was searching for, the long-sought vaults of treasure. The location of the lock was a mystery, but he quickly found it. A regular key wouldn't fit in that lock, so he crafted a line of magic, shaping it into a special key. It fit perfectly into the keyhole, and he celebrated his achievement. The door began to open slowly, using all the strength he had in his frail body. At last, he managed to enter the vault, landing on his feet in front of countless golden treasures. With a wide smile of joy and excitement, he even asked how his riches were doing. Concluding this chapter, he stared silently at all that money with a thoughtful expression. Now that he didn't have to worry about money, he could search for what he needed in peace. Suddenly, he was startled by something he saw. The storage stones were right before him. To maintain the vaults, he had imbued them with a bit of magic, and the day to use them had finally arrived. He picked up a magic stone in his hand. It began to emit a bright blue light. This was expected of a storage stone, as its magical power should overflow in exactly that way. He stopped extracting the magic and said he would first take care of the remaining storage stones, deciding to transport the letter jewels before the heavy gold bars. The day was beautiful in Valhalla. Kim Joo-hyuk was once again sleeping in his chair like a zombie. He thought he must be a cursed lunatic for planning to build a vault in the future, as his muscles were already aching just from dating a little. Suddenly, the girl appeared in front of him again, asking him to teach her swordsmanship techniques. It really seemed like she wasn't going to let it go. He reasoned, based on his information, why she had chosen him to teach her swordsmanship, and soon asked Arin Choi about her persistence, since she could learn everything from her family. She replied that she had never seen anyone handle a sword better than Kim Joo-hyuk. He then questioned her about her father, as he was the head of the Trojan family, and probably better with a sword than him. Just as she was about to talk about her father, the instructor called Kim Joo-hyuk to the teacher's lounge, leaving him very confused about it. But it was all related to the things he had asked about last time, and since he really wanted to know, he quickly got up without hesitation. He rose from his chair and left, leaving the girl standing right there. She asked for permission to speak. She remained silent for a moment with a slightly sad expression. Kim Joo-hyuk told her that the next day at 6 in the morning, she should meet him at the local training field. She was stunned by the information she had just received. The boy asked if she didn't want that opportunity. She had a moment of realization and replied that she would definitely be there. Meanwhile, in the nearby teacher's lounge, the instructor sat in front of the boy, and since he had a class in a few minutes, he spoke quickly and without delay. First, Kim Joo-hyuk's access to the constellation building had been approved, and he only needed to go to the building's basement. However, he was not authorized to enter any floor below the basement. He replied affirmatively and promptly asked when he could do it. He found out he could go that same night and confirmed he would do so. Kim Ling-gun was very surprised, as he thought the boy would make a scene about not being authorized to go below the first basement floor. Finally, the two parted ways to attend to their respective duties. The boy left the room immediately after that. Meg had already fallen in Valhalla. This was the place they sought. It was the treasure of Valhalla Academy in the Constellation Hall. The boy observed everything around him. There were two guards dressed in black standing and keeping watch. As he carefully observed everything, one of them was speaking into a radio with someone. Kim Joo-hyuk remarked that the security was stronger compared to the main gate and was told that this demonstrated the importance of the Constellation building. He found not only about the guards but also about the exterior walls. They were covered with all kinds of magic, completely surrounded except for the entrance. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to ask his professor for clarification. He then questioned how someone could descend to the second basement floor and whether it would be illegal. Kim Ling-gun quickly replied that it wouldn't make someone a criminal but would get them expelled from there. Moreover, they'd go insane before leaving the school, leaving the boy slightly confused about it. Kim Ling-gun then explained that on the second floor, the magical power of the constellations flowed without restriction, and anyone who touched the magic would have their mind shattered. The boy quickly grasped the situation. Meanwhile, the instructor wondered why the boy had asked about this before entering the building, as it seemed like he truly wanted to go down there. But he soon dismissed the thought, reasoning that the top entry candidate wouldn't do such a thing since staying at the academy was much better. Kim Ling-gun informed him that he had only 30 minutes. The boy replied affirmatively, saying he'd be back soon. Suddenly, the panel appeared, displaying and ordering the same things as before. He observed it carefully right there. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't care about being expelled since he had come to Valhalla solely because of that place, and he had to go to the third basement first. He wondered why there were so many endless stairs in that building. As he descended them quickly, suddenly he saw something ahead of him. That place looked like a massive prison. He was sure the Constellation Hall was on the first basement floor. All of it didn't seem that important, leaving him uncertain about going deeper. Suddenly, the panel appeared again, informing him that the requirements were met and that he was being transported to the hall, leaving him uncertain about what was happening and where this place might be. Suddenly, he began disappearing from there along with the panel. Someone possibly familiar greeted him in the new location. There was the infamous enemy, Brace. He looked at Brace, utterly surprised and wearing a terrified expression. Brace remarked that after 300 years, this was their reunion. Suddenly, in the middle of his speech, he received a strong punch to the face. Kim Joo-hyuk had delivered a direct blow to his enemy, and he was quite pleased to see that cursed figure. Brace asked his enemy to calm down, but he received another punch to the face. He tried to pacify the situation for a proper conversation, but yet again he was struck because Kim Joo-hyuk only wanted his death. All of his attempts to stop the fight were useless. He was already on the ground, weakened and defenseless, and Kim Joo-hyuk was growing tired of fighting. He then remarked that he wasn't the kind of person who used fists, but this case was different because Brace had destroyed his future. On top of that, Brace had ruined his wealth, honor, and all the time he had invested in his disciples. Brace then asked if Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't curious to know what kind of place this was. Kim Joo-hyuk admitted he was curious because there didn't seem to be anything peculiar about it. Brace explained that this was an imaginary world, a space within a relic, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk confused. What Kim Joo-hyuk was seeing, according to Brace, was purely imagination because his body had ceased to exist 300 years ago. He wanted to say that he had always been within that relic. The boy was deeply shocked as this revealed something significant. Brace gave a slight smirk at that moment and declared that he had become a constellation, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk speechless for a moment. Then, in anger, he delivered another strong punch to Brace's face. Meanwhile, outside the building, Kim Lean-doon had been waiting for the boy for quite some time. Suddenly, something appeared before him. There was Kim Joo-hyuk being searched by the local guards. Lean-doon questioned if the boy had done anything strange, but Kim Joo-hyuk said he had only looked around. He added that he hadn't gone any deeper because he didn't want to lose his head. The instructor then ordered him to go home and Kim Joo-hyuk agreed. He soon left the place. On his way back to the dormitory, he recalled a reunion with his terrible enemy from the past. He didn't care that Brace had become a constellation, he only wanted an answer about what that transparent notification panel was. Brace claimed to know nothing about it, and immediately received another punch to the face because Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't joking around. Brace explained that after being killed, he had been trapped in that thing for 300 years without any power. Kim Joo-hyuk calmed down after hearing this, opening his hand, discovering that Brace had also received that same notification. The information stated that Brace was to contact the reincarnated Kim Joo-hyuk to retrieve his memories. And because of that, a suspicious figure had emerged, making him question the reason for becoming the owner of the Tower of Destruction. Kim Joo-hyuk was shocked and uncertain about who this man was and what he was doing. Brace then admitted he didn't know, as part of his memory was missing and wouldn't return all at once. He then asked what Kim Joo-hyuk's notification said. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that the notifications instructed him to find a weapon and memories, but he couldn't read the lower part as it was censored by some symbols. He also didn't recall losing memories because he still remembered the tower. Brace suggested that perhaps not everything had come to his mind yet, since he had already found the weapon, and the rest would come naturally. Kim Joo-hyuk was puzzled about the weapon. Brace explained that this space was the realm of the 4 village swords, which had become sacred relics, and that he had become a constellation because he had used one of them. Kim Joo-hyuk called him a cursed being, once again filled with rage. Back in the present moment, Kim Joo-hyuk reflected on how his village sword had become a relic and housed a constellation, leaving him deeply confused. He wanted to destroy everything and leave it behind, but there was one issue. Kim Joo-hyuk grasped a blue magical sword with his hand. He began thinking about Brace, who had once been called the King of Destruction, and how the new mission on the panel was only achievable with the village weapon. Suddenly someone arrived asking for his identification. They were a group of bullies and show-offs. The leader of the group was the eldest son of the Sunrise family, Lyric Sunrise, who said the seniors were away on a trip and demanded the boy introduce himself. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what kind of senior and bully accepts freshmen. The show-offs commented on the boy's behavior and his lack of manners for not saying hello. One of them said he wanted to beat the boy up and received the leader's approval. He approached Kim Joo-hyuk holding something in his hand. But as he started talking about the differences between first and second years, he took a massive kick straight to the chest. Kim Joo-hyuk told the thugs to come at him and stop talking so much, ending the chapter. The short-haired show-off groaned in pain and agony from the kick he had taken. Kim Joo-hyuk leaped, preparing another precise strike, and delivered another blow, this time to his talkative enemy's face. The boy flew far, utterly destroyed and severely battered. He landed on his backside, causing a loud thud in the area. Finally, he hit a wall, stopping abruptly. The blonde boy thought Kim Joo-hyuk was insane and reckless. His eyes widened as he stared at him in fear. He noticed that the boy, who moments ago had no weapon, now wielded a sword. Kim Joo-hyuk commented that the perfect grip felt incredible, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. He quickly ordered the thugs to attack because if they delayed, they'd be crushed. 3 hours earlier, Rockdale Ventric told the blonde boy he only needed to do something very simple. It was just to deal with one weak, useless student, and in return, a reward benefiting the Sunrise family would be given immediately. He provided the identification of the first-year student he wanted targeted. It didn't matter if the boy used weapons, as the mess would be easily cleaned up regardless. Finally, he asked if the boy would accept the proposal. The blonde boy said he understood everything and accepted it. He left, slamming the door hard and quickly without hesitation, thinking that the boy's first-place rank didn't matter because he was a first-year novice and couldn't compete with someone from the second year. The difference in rank between people was inevitable due to the first year's contracts with the constellations. Valhalla students had to visit the constellation room in the second semester of their first year to form a contract and become second years. Once they became contractors, they could invoke and use the power of the constellation, and in the blonde boy's mind, Kim Joo-hyuk didn't have an active guardian. He thought it would be easy to crush the boy. That's what he believed, but there was a problem with all of this. At that moment, the boy was already moving his sword, striking down yet another show-off. One of them cursed him, holding a sharp, blood-red knife, but suddenly he heard something approaching him. It was the rookie's sword, mercilessly annihilating him without hesitation. Out of nowhere, Kim Joo-hyuk heard something heading in his direction. It was another thug trying to attack him cowardly. The boy swung his sharp, pointed sword, but it struck only the dirt floor. The attacker stood there, confused as he had missed his powerful, strong strike, and Kim Joo-hyuk was already beside him, mocking him relentlessly. He promptly landed a precise sword strike to the thug's filthy, ugly face. The attacker flew far from the spot, leaving his friends stunned at what they were witnessing. And finally, after flying through the air, he landed headfirst on the ground brutally and harshly. The blonde boy was shocked as the rookie was taking down the second years one by one without even breaking a sweat. Before becoming contractors, second years should have better skills than first years, but these had proven to be useless and weak. The blonde boy wondered about the strange, unprecedented swordsmanship technique. It seemed like the boy was just moving around with moderate strength, but those hit could barely stand. Kim Joo-hyuk then faced the remaining opponents and said he would crush anyone wasting time during the fight. The blonde boy thought everyone there was deciding whether to attack or run away immediately. He told his team not to be afraid because the boy was just a weak, useless rookie. Kim Joo-hyuk remarked that the bully leader had a lot of nerve. This comment made the blonde boy furious and enraged, and he charged to him without hesitation. But suddenly, halfway there, he felt something touch him. It was Kim Joo-hyuk's sharp sword striking his body. He mocked him for standing still even knowing he would be hit, and finally delivered a strong and precise blow to his opponent, using all the strength he had in his body. The blonde boy wondered when the rookie had managed to get so close, and then collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately opened his palm and slapped the boy's face several times to wake him up. He also asked who they were and why they wanted to fight him without any apparent reason. The blonde boy explained that they were all senior veterans. Kim Joo-hyuk thought this wasn't normal and suspected there must be someone behind this pointless fight. The pale boy with earrings admitted it was just to break the nose of the rookie ranked first and nothing more. Kim Joo-hyuk mocked them, speaking about their supposed loyalty as bullies. And as he was leaving, he was called back by the arrogant little boy. The boy warned him that if people found out about the incident, the rookie would be expelled immediately. But Kim Joo-hyuk didn't care, saying everyone would know about this embarrassing and shameful defeat for the losers. Several second-year students had attempted to beat up a freshman, but ended up losing miserably, which would be humiliating if it got out. So the blonde boy should think carefully if he wanted any chance of joining a guild. Kim Joo-hyuk left after saying that, leaving everyone on the ground, beaten and humiliated. The clock struck 8:28. Rockdale Ventric anxiously waited for a call with great anticipation. Suddenly, Merrick's sunrise called him, leaving him excited. He immediately asked the boy if the beating had been delivered as promised, but the boy simply revealed the contractor's name at that moment and informed him that he was withdrawing from the job and relinquishing the responsibility, ending this chapter. The chapter begins with Rockdale Ventric being stunned by the boy's words. The blonde boy advised him to stay away from anything related to Kim Joo-hyuk from now on. He reflected on what had gone wrong with that cursed boy because just hours ago he had been confident. He suggested filing a report with the administration, because if there were any visible bruises left, there would likely be enough evidence to proceed. If the blonde boy did what Rockdale Ventric requested, he would be rewarded and sponsored by the family. But the boy thought that even with sponsorship from such a powerful group, they wouldn't be able to recover their lost honor. He then hung up on Rockdale Ventric, leaving him furious and enraged. He cursed the boy and smashed his phone to the ground. His assistant simply watched the scene, standing still and silent. He then called for Yuria, who responded affirmatively. She had already carried out Rockdale Ventric's orders, but since Desera was far away, it would take a long time for him to arrive. This made him even angrier because the boy was so distant. Meanwhile, in the beautiful country of Mexico, more specifically at the Aripia Academy, several boys lay sprawled on the ground. A brute was looking at his high-tech phone amidst all the chaos. He was the fearsome Desera Ventric and noticed that his brother wanted him to go to Korea because he would have to deal with someone named Kim Joo-hyuk, and the reward was already prepared, leaving him excited to hear this. He felt there was no one he could turn to for money after being kicked out, and now a great turnaround had happened in his life. The next day, at 6 p.m. in Valhalla's Grand Training Hall, Kim Joo-hyuk was impressed by the size of the enormous space. and was already excited, ready to run tirelessly with great determination. Suddenly, someone arrived and questioned his presence there. He discovered it was Barch in the sealed sword, leaving him surprised. Kim Joo-hyuk was only impressed because he thought the boy had escaped somehow and would need to beat him up and put him back. But since that wasn't the case, everything was fine between them. Kim Joo-hyuk planted his feet firmly on the ground and began stretching while asking questions to his fearsome enemy. He talked about the sword that had become an artifact and was currently being kept at Valhalla, as well as how they had left the constellation room with it. Kim Joo-hyuk was concerned because Brace had swapped the weapon for a slightly identical replica. He was questioned about how he had learned to do that and replied that even after losing all his power, he could still create such forgeries. Kim Joo-hyuk discovered that Brace didn't know why he had such strange abilities. Suddenly, the gray-haired girl arrived at the scene. While Kim Joo-hyuk was still stretching his body, he was surprised by the girl's presence. She then asked about the swordsmanship lessons, but the boy wasn't going to teach her at that moment. Instead, they would start by improving her stamina. The cute girl looked very confused upon hearing this. Still, she was determined to learn, willing to do whatever was necessary. Kim Joo-hyuk told her to start stretching immediately, and she responded affirmatively. Although it was basic, the girl needed to improve her stamina to better absorb mana and control it more easily. The current training method was quite strange since it prioritized one thing over another equally important aspect. Koiran, despite possessing a lot of mana, only had the stamina of a student wielding a simple sword. She informed him that she had finished stretching. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said they would begin real training at that very moment. The two then started doing a lot of push-ups, and they also did squats with great determination. Additionally, they performed upper body exercises. Choi Erin ended up utterly exhausted, collapsed on the ground, physically destroyed and gasping for air. But she was astonished to learn that this was just the beginning of the crazy and intense preparation. Kim Joo-hyuk told her to stop being lazy and get up immediately without hesitation, because they still had to run 20 long kilometers around the area. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first year Class A, Kim Joo-hyuk wondered about the girl's physical condition and commented that she had a body with great development potential. She was next to him, apparently tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a physically worn-out expression. The class teacher then called for silence from everyone present. The superior class instructor and supervisor of Dimensional Monsters, Lilia, informed them that they would have this simple written exam that day. Even though she had briefly explained it on the first day, she had asked all students to study. So that day, she would test their knowledge of how to deal with each individual monster. The exam began shortly after. Everyone seemed deep in thought as they worked on it. Even Choi Arin appeared to be struggling with the test. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at her as if she were his most feared enemy. Suddenly, the teacher checked the time on her very advanced and stylish watch. She then announced the end of the time limit, instructing everyone on how to return the test papers. That test wouldn't count toward the general individual ranking, but would measure their skills for the next class. Once all the tests were submitted, she informed the class that next week they would begin the first official lesson in the virtual combat communication room. She then bid farewell to everyone as she quickly left the room. Kim Joo-hyuk remained silent after hearing all this with a thoughtful expression. Brace began questioning him about the method he used for the tests, leaving him astonished to learn that Brace had been watching everything. The enemy said he had nothing to do in there and was asked about his thoughts on the protagonist. He explained that, to be exact, he could only hear the boy's imaginations related to him. Kim Joo-hyuk said he had simply written the answers as he knew them, and his enemy replied that he understood. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first-year teacher's lounge, the teacher was quite annoyed with Kim Joo-hyuk because he dared to call those useless phrases answers. Kim Ling-gun was walking nearby with a cup in his hand. Suddenly, he heard some strange noises around him. There was the teacher, extremely upset and furious at the moment. He approached and asked if those were the tests from his class, receiving an affirmative response. She explained her method for preparing the next lesson and highlighted that there was valuable information within the seemingly simple test. She noted that, as expected from Class A, which consisted of prodigious children from the best families, everyone had done very well, leaving Kim Ling-gun surprised. He then said he would be on his way, and the teacher responded affirmatively. He continued sipping his mysterious drink from the white cup. Suddenly, he was startled by a loud scream, causing him to spill the entire contents of the cup. That was the moment the teacher became furious upon looking at Kim Joo-hyuk's test. He approached her and asked if the prodigious boy hadn't tried hard enough. He discovered that the boy had been mocking the class in such a way, leaving him astonished and shocked. Lilia stated that this couldn't be ignored and that she would show all the answers in the next class, because it wasn't that easy to deal with monsters in such a manner. A week later, during a virtual combat simulation at Valhalla, Lilia announced that she had graded the tests from the previous class, and although most students did very well, there was a caveat. She ordered Kim Joo-hyuk to step forward. Without hesitation, he did as instructed. The two stood facing each other. Lilia handed the boy his test sheet. It was marked with numerous red corrections. The teacher then revealed that Kim Joo-hyuk had received a 0 and it seemed he hadn't taken the tests seriously. He disagreed, insisting he had put effort into it. She had a few questions for him. The first was his answer to the question about the most effective method to handle a stone goblin. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that the solution was to strike it in the stomach. The second question asked what to do if 8 wild goblins were charging at someone. Kim Joo-hyuk answered that the solution was to send each one to hell, starting with the closest. The teacher couldn't believe he was serious with those answers, and he hadn't even tried to disguise his lack of effort. The best way to kill a stone goblin wasn't with a sword, as it wouldn't be powerful enough. Lilia doubted Kim Joo-hyuk could even manage it. He contradicted his teacher, saying he would finish the fight with a single strike. This left her irritated with his nonsense and boundless ego, but she understood his confidence. And since Kim Joo-hyuk was so sure of his answer, she decided to give him a unique opportunity. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the area. A monster roared, trying to intimidate everyone. It stood in front of the prodigy boy and the protagonist. The teacher then informed him that if he could kill the stone goblin exactly as he had explained, she would immediately change his test grade. Kim Joo-hyuk said he understood. He placed his test on the control table for the time being. He then selected a single sword from among all the weapons and charged toward the stone goblin without hesitation. The goblin stared at him with a horrifying, grotesque expression. The teacher already knew he had killed 120 goblins before, so she was confident in his talent. But there was a catch. Against this stone goblin, a random sword alone wouldn't suffice. Suddenly, the goblin began to scream in pain and agony. The boy had already started landing precise blows. The teacher was astonished at what she was witnessing. The goblin groaned desperately, with a gaping wound in its body and a deep crack in its head. Kim Joo-hyuk then began channeling mana into the fight. He discarded the simple sword, throwing it far away. He finished the battle easily, without any real excitement. With a single strike to the goblin's stomach, the fight was over. The little girl was impressed because without any magic, he had killed a stone goblin with just one sword. The burly blonde boy watched in complete silence, utterly shocked. Even Choi Arin was visibly amazed. Lilia let out a deep sigh and asked how the boy had managed to do that. He explained that he had simply struck the goblin in the stomach, leaving the teacher puzzled. She felt that to kill a stone goblin with just a sword, one would need to be at least an A-class contractor, which made logical sense under these circumstances. Yet the boy had done it with just a weapon. He then asked if his answer had been correct, but Lilia replied in the negative, saying it had just been one question and there were more to come. The boy was perplexed because it seemed like everything would happen again. Suddenly, the ground began to open. He was amazed at what he saw. It was a vast, dark tunnel stretching endlessly. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked his teacher what it was about. She told him to focus and look ahead. A faint step was heard. A few monsters appeared from the darkness of the tunnel. She thought it was challenging to control goblins with rage issues, because using the wrong technique could trigger their scream ability, attracting more goblins from the area. Typically, one would fight them with magic and kill them all at once or simply flee. And although the boy could only see 3 goblins in front of him, 5 more would appear with every mistake he made. Even if he could use his sword, it would be difficult, and Lilia had heard that his speed with it was quite slow. He then began a series of strikes, hitting the enemy squarely in the forehead, making the others furious and enraged. The green goblin remained alert during the battle, but was soon struck in its cursed mouth and fell brutally to its knees. The teacher was impressed by all of it while the boy boasted, because he had also answered the second question correctly. On another day at the training center in Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Arin were training on the treadmill, running at an incredibly fast pace. The running members were off the charts. Soon, the gray-haired girl collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted. Once again, she was gasping for air. Kim Joo-hyuk looked at her without saying a single word with an almost amused expression. He then asked her if she didn't train in her clan as she was struggling with such a simple exercise. She replied that she didn't push herself in that way. He retorted by asking how Choi Arin would fight against those strong and horrifying monsters. She responded once again, saying she could use her magical power by borrowing strength from the constellations. Kim Joo-hyuk thought everything was as expected, since instead of training their own stamina, they focused on magical power because they relied on the constellations. By not improving their physical abilities, it was fine as long as they trained enough to borrow power from a constellation, but the risks were immense. There was a chance of being caught in the middle of a labyrinth or dungeon with a magic-restricting spell. Additionally, their mana could be completely depleted after prolonged battles. Not to mention that constellation members might refuse to lend their power. After thinking about all this, Kim Joo-hyuk called the cute girl. He asked if she thought those stamina exercises were worth anything to her. Choi Arin immediately answered affirmatively, because he had told her he would teach her swordsmanship if she did them. He was stunned by that kind of response because it was basically the reason he had her do it. She was quite confused upon hearing all of this, but they brushed it off and wrapped up the day's training as they needed to head to the academy soon. She didn't understand why he wasn't going. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he was going to do one more set of physical exercises. He asked if she wanted to join in too, but he reconsidered and dropped the question. Choi Arin quickly bid farewell and left the place, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk alone, holding a giant weight. Brace immediately asked if Choi Oren was the girl's real name, to which his enemy replied affirmatively. The villain was astonished that she had endured the training without even complaining. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he had only decided to train her in swordsmanship because she had pestered him so much. He also responded to another of Brace's questions, saying he had never revealed the truth to her, but he suspected she already knew. Both of them found it interesting that the girl had grasped his strength just by observing, which was why Kim Joo-hyuk would teach her some skills. Suddenly, the boy heard something around him. There was a muscular man bench pressing right there, with enormous heavy weights. The guy was drenched in sweat and groaning from the effort. Out of nowhere, he also noticed Kim Joo-hyuk's presence. The two stare at each other briefly, without saying a word. Kim Joo-hyuk then asked how long the man had been there. The man explained that he had been around since the beginning, as it was customary for him to train after class. He quickly excused himself and left the area. Kim Joo-hyuk began contemplating the martial skeletal structure and skills of Siyuko. Brace immediately questioned why the boy was interested in that muscular man. He explained that Siyuk was destined to be smarter than those who only train in magical power. Kim Joo-hyuk asked Brace what those cursed constellations did, to which Brace replied that he wasn't entirely sure. The boy mocked his enemy for only being able to say that. Brace explained that even as a constellation himself, he had been isolated there for 300 years, knowing nothing about the others. He also mentioned that Kim Joo-hyuk could probably learn more about them if he completed the new mission in the Systems tab. This left Kim Joo-hyuk deep in thought about the subject. The panel suddenly appeared with some information and precautions to be taken. It mentioned the center of the Great Valhalla Forest, home to Madagaga Rona, leaving the boy pensive. It was a place he had heard about in class and was the final survival location they had visited during the first semester. He thought that if it weren't for that cursed mission, he would just leave after recovering his belongings, but it seemed like he needed to be stealthy for now. Brace immediately questioned the boy's thoughts, which he quickly justified by recalling the fight that had happened, and said that if he hadn't done what he did, his head would have been crushed, just like Brace's had been. Kim Joo-hyuk also thought that, in any case, until he completed the mission, he couldn't leave, so the secrets of reincarnation would reveal themselves automatically. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom in London, more specifically at the Bentrit Mansion, the place had many old-fashioned details, with eerie paintings covering all the walls. An enormous table with a man and a woman seated at it came into view. The woman immediately began her inquiries. She was Adelia Ventrick, the vice head of the household, demanding to know what had happened. The man reported that the labyrinth near Reading had been solved. Adelia congratulated him on this and asked if there was anything else to report at the moment. He mentioned that he was considering recruiting a few competent men he had encountered along the way, particularly a survivor from the robber clan. The leader questioned him further, to which he replied that the man was very strong and the others were A-class contractors. Adelia agreed to grant them the Bentrick's blessing, instructing him to conduct capability tests for them, to which the man affirmed. She then asked again if that was all for the day. Suddenly, she learned that the man had a report regarding Rockdale Ventrick. He mentioned hearing about a recent incident. He informed her that Desira had been summoned to South Korea. This left Adelia furious, her expression filled with rage. Desira Ventrick was the black sheep of his family, the worst delinquent to exist. He had committed numerous heinous acts using the family's name, including killing 5 people at the British Academy at the age of 19, simply because of an argument. At 20, he was completely disowned by the Ventrick family. Adelia reflected on how he had been hiding for many years and was now going to meet Rockdale. She then ordered surveillance to be placed under Rockdale's name, to which she received a firm affirmation. The man was also instructed to inform the arrogant young boy. Because he was caught doing anything suspicious, you would be removed from the family immediately. The man affirmed this once again, saying the report was complete and excused himself promptly, leaving Adelia alone in the enormous room. She remained silent, her expression contemplative, thinking about all those cursed fools using powers they didn't earn through merit. That ability was something beyond normal. On her chair, the words, "all for one and everything is only for one person," were inscribed. In the end, all abilities were meant for her. Lost in thought, she sought confirmation from something. It was the eerie painting of the Guardian constellation on the wall. Back in the classroom at Valhalla, the professor was discussing the formation of the word malefactor. In modern society, this noun was primarily used to describe someone who used the powers of constellations for evil. Malefactors operated both alone and in groups. Among these organizations, the most notorious was the group Onagad. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that while exercising made him feel stronger, he also had a knack for using mana. Though not at genius level, he was much better than before reincarnation, yet something still felt off. This made him question the reason for the poor condition of his body earlier. When tried 2 circulation on the first day, he could barely finish, as his mana was below that of an average person, and his physical state was so poor that just digging a little left him feeling faint. Yet even with a body like that, shouldn't have deteriorated to such a degree. Something must have happened in the past, but there was no reason to stress about it now. Suddenly, a finger tapped on his desk. He looked at it, calm and composed. It was the beautiful Yu Soyeon. She left a crumpled piece of paper on his desk. The boy was surprised by the note. On the paper, a large "Hey" was written. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what was going on now. A little while later, Kim Lee-boon announced that the students would be allowed to leave campus over the weekend, but they needed to submit separate requests. He concluded his lesson with that simple announcement. Kim Joo-hyuk reflected on the idea of leaving the campus. He quickly filled out his request for a Saturday outing with a rather trivial reason. Brace was surprised by the boy's decision, which he confirmed was genuine, and asked where he planned to go. Before he could answer it, he heard a voice calling him. There was a cute girl wearing a tiara. The two had a brief conversation about what had happened hours earlier. Kim Joo-hyuk had even responded politely to her note, but she hadn't replied. He had urged her to speak quickly, as he needed to submit something and was quite busy. The little girl stumbles over her shy words. She can't form a single sentence without interrupting herself. Kim Joo-hyuk grows frustrated, calling her crazy and telling her to just nod. She becomes very angry at being insulted like that. She questions his comment but is quickly retorted, being told that making someone angry for no reason was normal for her. He then asked again what she really wanted. She recalls a moment in time when she had been observing something. It was Kim Joo-hyuk's fight with that horrifying and ugly stone goblin. She had been impressed by that battle, especially because the boy had used only a sword without any magic. It was entirely different from what the books described. She only wanted to ask him how he had killed that ugly stone monster, but her pride hurt too much to allow it. Finally, she sighs and musters the courage to ask him. Just as she is about to speak, the teacher arrives and asks the very same question she had been about to ask. The gray-haired, bespectacled woman seemed very excited to learn the boy's tricks. Kim Joo-hyuk simply wondered where that crazy woman had suddenly appeared from. He quickly asked why she was intruding out of nowhere, as he thought she disliked him, leaving her confused. He then rephrased his words, asking if she didn't like him because he had embarrassed her. The teacher promptly replied that she didn't care about that and had believed there was only one way to kill monsters, but the boy has shown her otherwise. She wanted to know everything immediately. She asked him if he wanted to be her assistant, to which he replied negatively, explaining that he needed to submit his departure form right away. That crazy woman tried to convince him in every possible way, with little success, and the two ended up leaving the cute little girl alone there. She then reflected on all the teacher's comments, feeling very confused. Taking a deep breath, she calmed herself and decided to let it all go, thinking she didn't need that humiliation. The next day, Kim Joo-hyuk was amazed by something in front of him. The enormous market was revealed, ending the chapter. Already in the immense dormitory of Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk sits in front of his gaming computer. Brace asks his host what he was searching for on his phone, receiving the reply that it was just information about the next day's location. The protagonist wanted to find a place where he could sell the treasure found in the vault, and that seemed like a decent spot. If the enemy had understood everything, betting he had indeed found it. There was a virtual marketplace that existed on his phone. Based on some information, only an entry fee was charged to exchange practically anything in that supposedly dangerous dark web shopping environment. The reason for such an unusual marketplace's existence was explained by the fact that its creator was a guardian constellation called the Secret Ruler, according to the protagonist of the story. That's high-class individuals openly used the tool, and despite being completely illegal, governments dared not interfere in it. That was also the reason he managed to figure out how to enter so easily, deciding to use it for a while. Kim Joo-hyuk reads some simple tutorials on the internet. He soon notices that there was a link in the comment section of the post he was reading. Suddenly, some messages arrived from the little girl Choi Arin. They were several bunny emojis crying a lot. She informs her trainer of her absence from the next day's training, to which he replies that he also had a commitment. Kim Joo-hyuk sends a few laughs in between the messages. This leaves Choi Arin quite confused about their meaning. He quickly explains that he was just wishing her a good trip. He also asks her to stop sending so many emojis. Kim Joo-hyuk wonders about those virtual bunnies, but quickly shifts his focus to his real goal of securing a reservation and location. He quickly clicks on something dubious on his phone screen. Soon he leaves his house dressed darkly, wearing a long hoodie and a hood over his head. The location was somewhere nearby. It was probably an old cafe in the region. The entrance was right in front of him at that moment. The wooden door of the place was old, and inside there was a huge mess. Kim Joo-hyuk opens the gates of the place to enter cautiously. He just needed to go inside and head to the right corner. The likely spot was right there, close by. He opens the gray door with his hand and slowly enters another room in the place. Soon he sees something impressive in front of him. All of that was the grandiose black market. Night was already falling in the area, and the moon shone brightly in the darkness of the sky. All of it seemed very strange to Kim Joo-hyuk. It was his first time there, but the place was coincidentally very familiar. The purple sky along the clouds and moon resembled the night he had seen 300 years ago. Suddenly, a man arrives, asking if it was the boy's first time there. The man had a cheerful expression, wearing black clothes and bangs in his hair. Kim Joo-hyuk wonders if that guy was the employee from the posts, as his leather jacket seemed very familiar. The man confirms that information and comments on the marketplace's usage, but the protagonist only knew the rules to a certain level. He quickly hands the man a thick bundle of cash, which the guy thanks him. Kim Joo-hyuk, after doing that, reflects on the money he spent and was about to earn there. There was something he wanted to ask the man in black. The question was where to find the right place to sell all the jewels he had. but he didn't want to auction them as the man in black assumed. Instead, he just wanted to get rid of them quickly. The man responds that he should go to the market in the 3rd district, as many merchants there would buy anything. Kim Joo-hyuk hesitates, wondering who the most trustworthy guy in the area might be, and the man replies that it's a certain Morris known for offering the best prices. The man in black provides directions to the 3rd district, leaving the little visitor very grateful. But he had one more small piece of advice. He recommended that Kim Joo-hyuk wear a mask in that area. He explains that due to the nature of the goods traded there, everyone wore something to cover their faces most of the time, and that mask was a complimentary gift given to Kim Joo-hyuk, who thanks him from the bottom of his heart. The man in black asks him to enjoy his time in the area. Now in the 3rd district of the Grand Black Market, a man in a white mask is seen observing a beautiful, shiny diamond stone. Soon, Kim Joo-hyuk approaches, asking for his identity. It's confirmed that the guy is indeed the real Morris of the good prices. The protagonist informs him that he has some valuable goods to sell. Morris said it all depended on the items, but if it was just gold or jewelry, the evaluation would be quick and practical. Kim Joo-hyuk promptly started taking things out of his large backpack. Quickly, a black bag, seemingly heavy, appeared from within. He stated that he wanted to sell the contents of that bag. Morris wondered about the objects inside it. He immediately began evaluating the ring that was there. Suddenly, he was quite surprised by what he was observing so meticulously in front of him. That ring was a rare artifact from the era of destruction. There was definitely an ancient and very precious item, regardless of the angle of his view from. Morris wondered if the other items were the same. Inside the bag, there were many of them shining brightly. The man with the white mask determined that they were all undoubtedly from the same era. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him, making him very alert. It was Kim Joo-hyuk, asking how much he would offer for all of it. This left him quite unsure about what to do. He wondered how such a young boy had managed to acquire so many precious, rare, and ancient artifacts. He then asked Kim Joo-hyuk where he had gotten all those items. The latter replied that such questions probably shouldn't be asked in that place. Morris, known for his fair prices, quickly apologized for it. He regretted the mistake he had made, which put his good reputation as a negotiator at risk. He then said he didn't know how much to offer for everything. He couldn't process those items as they were artifacts from the era of destruction, and he lacked the capital to buy them all. Kim Joo-hyuk then considered the rarity of the pieces and asked where he should go to get a fair price. Morris explained about the tall auction building on the way. Another question was directed to him regarding how long the auction would take. He replied it would take 2 to 3 weeks because many people book sluts, making the process slower. After another question, Kim Joo-hyuk found out he would need to return to the market personally afterward. He lamented learning about all these frustrating procedures. He quickly asked the approximate value of his goods would reach at the auction. This made Mr. Morris very thoughtful. He soon picked up his cell phone. He showed the approximate value, leaving the young man very surprised. The boy thought about how many zeros were on that screen and how expensive the goods were in the past, which is why he had kept them. He then asked how much of that value Morris would not have. Based on the estimated value, the man replied that he had only 3/4 of the total amount if he sold everything he owned. Kim Joo-hyuk, slightly confused, asked if that was truly the case. He then decided to accept the offered amount immediately. This left the man with the white mask very surprised, astonished, and perplexed. The artifacts from the era of destruction had a high value for another reason beyond their age. The other major reason was the constellations. These began to appear after that era and strangely reacted well to artifacts originating from that time. Morris thought that a powerless person could form a contract with a powerful constellation thanks to those objects, and the alchemist's zone remained active. Holding a shiny and very magical ring between his fingers, he was impressed after a second inspection, as the mana in the accessory flowed perfectly. The magic released at the end of the era of destruction still seemed present and bore all the signs. He was very pleased, having purchased 8 artifacts from that era for such a low price. Morris grabbed the little bag in which the jewels had been brought to him. He celebrated as he placed them inside, thinking it was truly his lucky day. Suddenly, he felt someone approaching. His eyes widened in fear. Standing there was a man dressed in black, wearing a frightening black mask. Thus ended the character's participation in that scene of the story. Elsewhere, a huge door came into view. Kim Joo-hyuk opened it with all his strength. He quickly removed the mask from his face because it had been so uncomfortable that he had thought he might die wearing it. That place resembled the cafe from his starting location. He quickly grabbed his cell phone to check his account's transaction history. With that sale, his money troubles were solved, and he celebrated his earnings from the 8 rings in the vault. Kim Joo-hyuk felt very happy because he still had many of them stored, so he wouldn't face any problems from now on. Suddenly, a suspicious notification popped up on his cell phone. It was a call from an unknown number. He answered quickly without hesitation. The woman on the other end of the line immediately invited him to have a meal together. He asked how she had gotten his number, and she hurriedly explained that she was a teacher from Valhalla. And soon she gives him instructions for the location of the meal without giving the boy any chance to question her, leaving him quite annoyed because she hung up on him. Kim Joo-hyuk then decides to go to the location since he had nothing better to do, and the silly girl was going to spend all her money just to make him eat for free, thus concluding the scenes of this very unusual invitation. Once again, we return to the scene of the man in the black mask and black clothes. Morris asks why that man is there, and the man questions if their relationship is really that bad. Morris explains that a normal merchant cannot simply talk to the owner of the market, even if they've met a few times. That man standing there was the owner of the place known as the Black Cat, who comments that he greatly admires the merchant for treating him in that way. Morris asks why the Black Cat is there again. He explains that it's nothing significant, just that the merchant's participation in the auction for the first time in a long while seemed very strange to him. Morris quickly comments that the anonymity of the registrations seemed to be very flawed after all. The Black Cat explains that as the real owner of the market was a constellation, he could access any information they wanted, and he immediately asked to see the items listed for the auction. Morris agrees without any issue, though thinking that the Black Cat's interest in all of this was very strange as it was his first time doing this. He quickly throws the black bag containing the items from the era of destruction onto the table, leaving the little Black Cat deep in thought and speechless. He soon comments on the value of those objects, leaving Morris confused about what he was talking about so suddenly. Out of nowhere, a panel appears saying that the constellation on the other side is watching in shock. The message repeats incessantly on the device. The Black Cat quickly realizes that his constellation desperately wanted that ring, concluding this chapter of the story. In another location at the Valhalla restaurant, a fork gently wraps around the pasta, which looks quite delicious, and is soon brought toward the mouth. The teacher then savors the food slowly, and comments that it is very delicious and tasty, but soon she seems a little confused, quickly asking why Kim Joo-hyuk isn't eating, to which he replies that he's just wondering how Valhalla has a place like this. She explains that besides the school cafeteria and the staff restaurant, there's also a normal place like this, but Kim Joo-hyuk isn't very interested in it, and asks why she called him there. She's speechless for a brief moment. Then she quickly invites him to be her assistant, which he immediately declines. The teacher asks him not to refuse so quickly, as he would gain many benefits as an intern. She pleads with him to listen for a bit because it was obvious she would make this request. Kim Joo-hyuk shows a tiny bit of interest, asking about those benefits. The teacher says he would receive a scholarship and other financial aid, but he still isn't very interested. He would have the chance to write a paper with his mentor and could write about the 3 types of attacks on monsters. If that happened, his name would be listed in the World Association of Monster Research, gaining much glory and wealth, but he still doesn't care. The teacher keeps trying to convince him, even offering more days off from school, but Kim Joo-hyuk remains unimpressed, leaving her deep in thought about her next persuasive proposal. She tries to appeal to his oversized ego and fails miserably. Frustrated, she tries to end the conversation by imposing that he become her assistant. Kim Joo-hyuk responds again that he doesn't want to, thinking that her proposals weren't tempting or decent enough to accept. His urgent goal at that moment was to reach the center of the Great Forest, and even with the teacher as his instructor, it would be difficult to pass the performance evaluation. The protagonist then delivers a checkmate in the conversation, firmly stating that he doesn't want to be an assistant or write papers, leaving her very upset. The teacher quickly proposes to exchange information instead. She suggests giving some news of interest to Kim Joo-hyuk in exchange for the mysteries of the impressive monster attacks. He's interested in this, quickly learning that the gossip was about Choi Arin. Kim Joo-hyuk soon says he's no longer interested, while thinking he was only helping the girl, but then hears that she might be disowned by her own family. He's left a bit speechless upon hearing this, and quickly tries to leave, leaving his teacher desperate. Kim Joo-hyuk explains that he's finished eating and the benefits weren't attractive enough, so he should leave. The teacher becomes very angry because she expected some information in return. He tries to explain that he doesn't care, but has already heard everything. Kim Joo-hyuk asks permission to ask something he's very curious about. He asks why the teacher seems so strict in class despite being overly childish. She explains that as she teaches about mysterious monsters, many problems would arise if they were treated as a joke. The attacks could directly impact the students' survival rate, and since they were somewhat foolish, more strictness was required. Kim Joo-hyuk thinks it's all just a simple ideology, but it wasn't only that, it was the duty of a true teacher. He mockingly scoffs at these things in a very arrogant manner. As he was about to leave, the teacher calls out to him again. She presses him for information but doesn't succeed, thus ending these funny and tense scenes of the story. Meanwhile, in Sejong at the Trojan family's temple, a man was seated at a table in front of Treon people. The guild leader, Choi Jong-seok, had called them there to ask about their intentions before the classification test to uphold the family's reputation. One of the young people present was from the group True History, a combat leader and the eldest son of the Trojan family, Choi Jinjin. The second person was also a member of the Trojan family, known as Choi Arin. The leader began explaining that if they passed the classification test, they would have the chance to form a contract through Cheonwoldo, one of the sacred relics, a testament to the rightful successors in the family. But there was a huge caveat if they failed. They would be literally cut off and expelled from the family. Without any further ado, Choi Jong-seok then asked if they were truly willing to go through with it. The boy affirmed without hesitation. Choi Arin also responded the same way without a second thought, and soon both were stared at by the leader for a few moments. Deep in thought, Choi Jansak decided to relay all the necessary information. He explained that the test would take place in 3 weeks, and that they could leave the premises for now, which they affirmed. The two then began walking slowly toward the exit. Suddenly, Choi Jinjin asked if the girl had managed to read the stars. She looked a bit confused as she hadn't quite understood the question. The boy then asked if she hadn't noticed their father's reaction when she confirmed her participation in the test. She remained silent, pondering that for a few seconds. Her brother commented that Choi Oren was evidently eager to become the family leader, and also to prove herself as a fully legitimate daughter. Hearing this,